Dakota, Chief 4 to Rescue 13. Rhode Island Fire to mid-flight, state EMS.
This is ambulance 850 responding to the MVA.
Center County Rescue 818 responding, motor vehicle accident, Rishel Hill Road.
818, it appears as if we have one patient entrapped in the vehicle on its roof. Could you please bring the air jacks down and start stabilization? Be advised, EMS advises head trauma, serious condition, time is critical.
Received, time is critical.
Visit any salvage yard across South Dakota and you'll clearly see the effects and remains of automobiles involved in collisions. But what you won't see are the people who were in them. What became of them? Well, for the ones who weren't wearing their seatbelt, you most likely look to nursing homes, rehabilitation facilities, critical care units, or even cemeteries to discover the entire story. It's true. The #1 killer of South Dakota's youth between the ages of 15 and 20 is car crashes. Has been for decades. The people of South Dakota are doing everything they can to put an end to this trend, through laws and better enforcement, through education and better understanding of the consequences, through changing our habits regarding safety, and your help in doing something about it. So, what really happens to a driver or passenger of a motor vehicle who isn't wearing their seatbelt when a collision occurs? Well, let's hear from the experts.
When a vehicle at 65 miles per hour impacts, let's say, a bridge abutment, which is strong and going nowhere, the very beginning of the physics occurs when the front end of the vehicle hits the bridge abutment. And at that moment in time, the beginning of 3 collisions is occurring. The first being the vehicle collision. The second part of that physics is the body collision. Then we have the next physical component, which is the organ collision. So we always ask, what were the weapons of the vehicle like? Was the windshield starred? Very huge weapon when one puts their head through the windshield because they weren't restrained. The steering wheel, was it bent? Was it damaged? Now the other weapon that we typically don't think of is the other passengers. One of those persons becomes a weapon as they fly forward or laterally and impact the other passenger.
Their deceleration is basically their body. They have no other restraint to help slow down the deceleration. So they suffer the consequences of using their head as the deceleration point or the rest of their body.
Seatbelts save lives by, #1, keeping the victim inside the automobile. Teenagers and other kids are much more likely to suffer serious injury when they are ejected from a vehicle, especially if it rolls over.
Just read the headlines of any South Dakota newspaper. Man killed in rollover. Young girl killed. Infant dies in rollover. It seems to be never ending. A daily reminder to all of us of the tragic loss of life from motor vehicle collisions. And almost always it's someone who wasn't wearing their seatbelt. Amazingly, we have stories from people who have actually walked away from rollovers and collisions, very similar to those in the newspaper. The only difference is, they were all wearing their seatbelts. Here are just 2 of those stories told by the actual survivors.
I never thought that we'd be involved in an accident because we're always looking out for the other guy. We were on our way home from tennis practice coming down the interstate, and out of the blue, a car from the other side of the interstate came and hit us broadside on the left and caused my car to go over an embankment and roll 2 or 3 times.
The first thought in my mind is, an event like that is, am I going to die? It was pretty scary.
I made sure my children were okay, and we unclipped our seatbelts. Our seatbelts did not impair us from getting out of the car to safety. But thank goodness we were wearing our seatbelts because that's what saved our lives.
They said that I probably would not have made it if I hadn't had my seatbelt on. And so I often think about what it would have been like had I not had it on. I was sailing along at highway speeds, and there was a stop sign that was crumpled. Imagine a piece of paper that had been crumpled and bent up, but it had been nailed back up again. And I really didn't even notice that it was a stop sign until I was right up on the intersection. Well, another car was also coming at highway speeds, and we collided in the middle of the intersection and spun. And then I flipped over upside down into the irrigation ditch. I would have drowned, except that I was in my seatbelt. And people said, You wouldn't be alive if you hadn't had your seatbelt on. So the whole family wears seatbelts, and I take that very seriously, to wear a seatbelt and how important that is.
As you can see, seatbelts do save lives, but currently only 1/2 of all drivers in South Dakota wear them. This next story is about a 14-year-old girl who always wore her seatbelt, except this once. Her name was Sarah.
Sarah was a beautiful, vivacious, energetic, intelligent young lady, and she brought a lot of life into our family.
The Saturday before Sarah had her accident, she had an appointment in Rapid City. When we got in the car, she immediately put on her seatbelt, and she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I can't believe how automatic it is. I just get in the car and I put on my seatbelt right away." And I felt really good about this because it's always been a rule at our house. The car doesn't move until everybody has their seatbelt on. She normally did use her seatbelt, except this once. I have no doubt in my mind that had she had on her seatbelt the day the car rolled, she would still be here. The morning that Sarah died, we both got up and got ready for work like we normally do. My habit every morning with my kids was just before I left for work, I would go in and I would kiss each of them goodbye. I had my normal day at work, and it was 6 o'clock when the phone rang, and it was a police officer asking me to come to the hospital to identify my daughter. I did say, "Is she bad?" And he said yes.
I walked into the waiting room there at the emergency room, and there were my 2 boys and my wife sobbing with the 2 doctors present, and Kay's first words to me were, "Oh, Steve." And I knew at that point that we had lost Sarah.
The day after Sarah died, we had to go down and pick out a casket to bury our daughter in. 2 days after Sarah died, which was a Friday, they had the visitation at the funeral home. Saturday was her funeral. The next day, Sunday, would have been Sarah's 15th birthday. Monday was her burial. This horrifying ordeal got stretched out to 5 days. No family should have to go through this. All because she was not wearing a seatbelt. All I was told was that she'd lost control of the car and it had rolled, that she had been thrown through the sunroof, and that the car had rolled over. There isn't a day goes by that we don't all remember and think about Sarah and wish with all of our hearts that she were here. I just really hope that the kids that see this tape will stop and think, if I do have an accident and I'm killed, what is that going to do to my family? It was devastating for us. So we just miss her and think about her a lot.
If you still choose not to buckle up, take a moment to think of what you'll leave behind if you get killed in a car crash. Your friends, your family, your dreams, not to mention a lifetime of pain for your loved ones. Parents, who will raise your children? Just think, all of this could be avoided in 3 quick seconds with a simple click. So, what are the current laws regarding seatbelts in South Dakota? The law is that all occupants of a vehicle 17 years of age and under must at all times be wearing a seatbelt. This is a primary offense, which means a teenage driver can be stopped for not wearing their seatbelts. And remember, as the driver, you are responsible for any passengers under 18 not properly restrained. Here's Trooper Alan Welsh.
Right now we're taking enforcement action on anybody violating these laws, as we believe that wearing your seatbelt is going to save lives. You see people that lose limbs, their basically disabled. And it's frustrating to see that and know that their seatbelt could have prevented all that from happening. I can honestly say in all my years as a state trooper, I have never unbuckled a dead person. The enforcement of this law is going to save lives. How I feel personally about the seatbelts enforcing that law, I feel that I'm certainly not doing anybody a favor by giving them a warning or giving them a break. It's not going to help anybody to learn their lesson. And if that person were to go down the road and have an accident and be killed and I didn't write them a ticket, then I would be feeling pretty guilty about that. My primary goal as a state trooper is public safety. And as attitudes change and compliance increases, you just need to remember that a simple click can save a life.
If you take anything with you from this video today, let it be to buckle up, and make sure those around you buckle up too. It's not only the law, it makes good sense. Seatbelts save lives. Please, buckle up.